What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. We are talking about my favorite top 10 from least to most Blumhouse or Blumhouse Tilt movies. I'm going to include both of them because they both have the name Blumhouse. So what I am doing here is I am taking all of the movies that Blumhouse has made that I have watched. There have been a few that I have missed, such as Hush. I've heard great things about it. I just have yet to catch it, but we're just talking about the top 10. No honorable mentions here because if you want to see those, check the link in the description. That gives you my Letterboxd page. It has, I believe, 17 movies on it, so all of the movies that may or may not be on this list that I have seen are on that list. But we're talking about my favorite 10. Now, all of these 10 I either like or love. The bottom two I'm not the biggest fan of, but I still think they're solid movies, so I'm going to talk about them. Let's get into it. Now, like I said, I don't think the series as a whole is great, but I do think this is the best movie. That's not saying it's anything like crazy special, but the Purge Anarchy was a lot of fun when I saw it in the theater. There were some clear problems, but Frank Grillo really embodies this role. I didn't really like where they went in the next film, but before that, you get something that is just a lot of fun. It took the concept of the first Purge and made it more of an action adventure. You got to explore more of this world, see what was going on behind some of the scenes. I liked that, and I really love the style of this movie. It's just the story itself wasn't the most interesting thing in the world, but that was made up for with really cool action and solid acting, especially by Frank Grillo. I may have misspoken earlier. I do think Sleight is a pretty solid film. There were some issues here and there. It wasn't in my top movies of that year, but it was a really fun film that I wasn't expecting. It was like a superhero origin story in a sense. It gave you some interesting directions with our hero, and I love our main guy here. I want to see Jacob Lattimore in more leading roles because he really carried this movie. The whole element of magic was cool. I actually think they handled magic better here than, say, in a movie like Now You See Me. I think Sleight was fun. It explored some interesting themes, and that is why it's in my top 10. I know some people don't even like this movie, and it's not even technically the best of the franchise for others, but I'm going with the very first Paranormal Activity at number 8. Because imagine this, what was this, 2007? So a 7th grade Austin sitting on his couch watching this movie by himself in his house. Why I watched it, why my parents had it rented on demand, I will never know, but I was watching this for some reason. Listen, I was young, I was thinking it was true, and everything that was happening on screen actually happened. I know, but look, it scared the bejesus out of me. What do you want me to do? That is why Paranormal Activity is at this point on this list. I don't think it's the best movie ever, but what this series did for the genre as a whole was very interesting. It gave us some great scares, and Paranormal Activity, it's not the best movie, but my gosh, it's scary. Next up is the Ethan Hawke vehicle Sinister, and I really enjoyed this movie when it first came out. Once again, the story itself, it's something that we have seen before, but it's kind of twisted and turned on its head in a way that really scared me the first time that I watched it. There's some very interesting elements. The whole aspect of children is really freaky. I don't think the sequel went in a very good direction, but what they gave us with the first Sinister was interesting. It gave us sort of a franchise, and just the whole ideology behind this movie is a scary concept, so I think Sinister is a good Blumhouse movie. Now, what Blumhouse does so well to me is they focus on horror, of course, but they give you these random movies every now and then that are a surprise. And one that I actually didn't get to watch until about 2 years later was The Gift with Jason Bateman. And of course, Joel Edgerton. Now, there are so many elements to this film that I think work and make it kind of a horror film, but it also goes down that thriller route. You've got some incredible acting, some interesting twists and turns, and by the end of the movie, you don't really know what direction the actual final scene is going to go in, and that is why I love it. I really liked the idea behind this movie, but I think the acting and the directing are what really made it interesting. I think The Gift is a really cool little Blumhouse film. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and catch this one. I believe it's either on Netflix or Hulu. I might be wrong. Oh my gosh, 5 and 4 were very difficult for me, but I'm going to go ahead and say Split is my number 5. Now, that could change eventually. It's according on how my number 4 rewatchability factor goes, but I think James McAvoy, what he did in this movie was phenomenal. I contended for so long that he was just flat out forgotten about when it came to the Oscar race. There were so many elements of his performance that just flat out worked for me. I loved everything he did, and then of course you've got all of the great supporting main characters. Some of the plot lines with the extra girls, they didn't work as well, but when you get to the end with that twist, even without the twist, I think it's a great movie, but that twist added a lot. The entire reason I'm making this list is a tiny movie called Upgrade, and Upgrade was so stinking cool. If you guys haven't watched it, I will allow you to go see it. Then check out my review on my channel. I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, but it's number 4 on my list, and up to this point, we have seen some really good movies, so you know Upgrade has to be something special. If you look at it from a certain perspective, it is kind of a horror film, but there's elements of action. It's a thriller. There are things that happen that are unexpected. You have a great performance by Logan Marshall Green. Soundtrack and the camera tricks are great. I think Upgrade is really cool. It could either move down or up this list, but if it's going anywhere, I'm saying it's going up. Next up on my list is Insidious. Now, if you guys saw my modern horror movies countdown, these two movies were flipped. I had Split above Insidious, but going back and thinking about it and rewatching both films, I found out that I do believe Insidious had a bigger impact on the genre as a whole. I think Split is a fantastic movie, but Insidious has had all of these spin-offs. It was a scary film with a really good, creepy-looking villain. The concept of The Further was really cool, and you can't go wrong with James Wan's directing. The more I watch this film, the more I enjoy it. I do not like the sequels as much. There are some of them that I do believe deliver. I don't really think there's a horrible movie in the bunch, but Insidious 1 is really the one that got me hooked onto this franchise, and the more I watch it, the more I enjoy it. I told you guys, Blumhouse every now and then, I mean, they'll give you some stinkers, of course, but they will give you something that is just completely off the rails in the best direction possible, and that is a horror film in Get Out. I loved Jordan Peele's movie last year. It was so interesting, the route that they went down. I've talked about it so many times that I really don't need to reiterate it, but just please go watch this movie if you haven't seen it. Just the societal impact alone is great, but I don't look at that and say, oh, that's what makes it a great movie. No, the reason it's a great movie is because it's a great movie, and Jordan Peele seriously killed it behind the camera. I love everything about this, and the more I watch it, the more I like it. The more it goes up my 2017 list. Please go and watch this film. It didn't even register to me that this was a Blumhouse movie, but I looked on all the websites and the Wikipedias, and I saw the word Blumhouse, and I'm like, I guess one of my favorite movies of the last decade is a Blumhouse movie, and that is Whiplash. Whiplash is incredible. There are aspects and elements of horror just from J.K. Simmons' character alone. One of the best performances of the last 20 years, in my opinion. But what Miles Teller does is great. What Damien Chazelle does with music is great. The directing, the acting, everything about Whiplash is so good. The more I watch it, the more I enjoy it. I contend when people ask me, what movie should I watch that's not a big budget film and it has some really good music, I say, listen, you can watch La La Land, but before you do that, you need to go watch Whiplash, and that is why it's my #1 Blumhouse film. It doesn't really embody what Blumhouse is about with the horror, but when it comes to creativity behind the camera and in front of it, I do believe that's what Blumhouse and Blumhouse Tilt is all about now, and Whiplash is the definition of why it's my favorite movie on this list. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was really random, but Upgrade came out. I was thinking about Blumhouse all weekend, and I had to give you my top 10 films. Please go check out my Letterboxd page, check out my Stardust page on the Stardust app. It's a great app if you haven't used it. I'm doing reviews on there every single day. You guys are the absolute best, and I'll catch you later.